Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we bring back, as usual, as always, three of our favourite returning guests to Last Word on Spurs. And what we're billing these really is a bit of a weekly wrap-up show on all things Tottenham, where we'll be diving into all the latest Tottenham Hotspur news and giving you all of our latest views on everything Tottenham. Helping me get into this one. Look, I can give you a little secret. We're recording after the watershed. That means he can say what he wants. He can do what he wants. We've got legendary musician, superstar. They love him on this show. The wonderful Jah Wobble is back. John, how are you? Lovely to see you.
I'm good. They call me Jah fucking Wobble, actually, where I come from. So I wasn't going to swear. You made me swear. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really happy with the win. You know, winning it was a big. A few Spurs fans are saying that it's already gone. It's already in the past, and not they're more worried about the future. But I'm still glowing. It was a fantastic win. You know, really happy. My sons had never seen. They weren't old enough to remember us winning in this way, so they were delighted. My younger boy clambered on the roof opposite the balcony at the parade. He climbed up on the roof there, so they're well happy. So yeah, really good. I'm happy doing me music, so it's all good. I'm slightly concerned we haven't signed anyone yet. That looks like par for the course. It looks like it will probably it'll be like Teddy Bass in Sexy Beast with Daniel Levy saying to someone, "I'll give you a tenner. I'll give you a tenner. Is a tenner fair? For EZE or whatever. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 20. Is that all right? So we're probably back down to that. But look, that squad surely not as bad as they looked. Sometimes last year they looked championship level. But if they're not going to get players in, you can't let many go, right? Because you need a full squad.
Yep.
If you're going to compete on all these fronts convincingly,
Yep. Amen. And there's your weekly wrap-up. That's all we've got time for. We've already put a pound in the swear jar. Loads of John back on with us. Also back on the show. He needs no introduction. He's been with me throughout a lot of the summer so far and more to come. We've got the wonderful Ash over at Spurs Kings TV. Ash, always have you back. How are you? It's a heat wave over in the UK, right? But you're telling me not as hot as Barbados. So what am I moaning about?
No, I'm saying it's like Barbados, mate. What are you talking about? Julie, get the cans. Big up you lot, man. Yeah, man. Like John was saying, we're still European champions, man. And them not down the roads, they ain't got nothing to show. So let's keep it rolling. Just remind ourselves that I think it was a month ago, Friday. Yeah, that's when we lifted that trophy. So I'm still with that energy, man. I'm still good. The sun's shining. What more could you want right now?
Oh, man. Some signings maybe. We'll come on to that and more. Also, one man that, bless him, we always love him on this show. We've tried to give him a little bit of a hiatus break, although, as always, I've been always driving him mad to come on through the summer. He's loved. We love him so much. Ronald Dave at the Irish Hotspurs back. Dave, lovely to have you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm keeping well. How's everybody else keeping? Enjoying the weather, I hope. Good time to be a Spurs fan, still Europa League champions. And look, I think Frank's first interview was encouraging as well, So, yeah, good time to be alive. The only bad thing is we're dilly-dallying in the transfer market when everyone else is improving their squads for next season.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Tottenham isn't that to talk about. And as always, as you know, Johnny absolutely adores you. Crack sending his love. He said, I'm seeing Daniel as more of Donny Logan right now. So there you go. Cracks his love there. Bless you. And listen, we're going to come into, like I say, those points with regards to the transfer market, because I think it's fair to say, and already you've expressed your concerns, Dave, and so has John as well, that we're already rolling into the final week of June and business needs to be done. But we do know, as ever with Tottenham after a 2-year period, it means in the recent times, there's a new era at the football club, and that is being led by the great Dane, Thomas Frank, who, of course, is now firmly in the building. We've, of course, seen his recent first interview as Tottenham Hotspur head coach. And what we're going to do is take you just behind the scenes of what this last week has been like for Thomas, as he really does get to know Tottenham Hotspur. We're going to hear from Thomas directly, hear his views on his first week at the football club. He's still with us. We'll be back after hearing from Thomas directly.
Good to see you. How are we? All good?
On a full rebuild
Morning.
Good morning.
How are we?
Welcome home.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Finally we're here.
Beautiful day.
Finally we're here.
Yeah,
Beautiful
finally
day.
we're here.
It's always sunny here.
Yes, always.
Whenever you're thinking logistic already now, like some bolts with tactics and name with players and stuff like that, that will be very beneficial to do something like that.
Yeah.
Your office, Thomas?
That's my office. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So we can dress it how you want. Obviously you have tea, coffee and everything. Where
That's perfect.
the restaurant upstairs.
No, that's good. TV,
But it's I knew I was joining.
I'll put this up area
Yeah.
for the players. Players generally come down from upstairs. They come through the boot room, obviously into their changing rooms.
This, of course, will top in every aspect. I'll not spend too much time in here.
No,
It's the.
Hi, Chris. It's me.
this is Stuart's area really. So
Yes. Hi, nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
You've been around before, or?
Many years ago,
Okay.
mainly outside. So,
yeah, Stuart and the team set this up as more of a recovery area, don't you?
Yeah.
And, a rehab.
So this has turned into a little bit more of the recovery and testing gym, and then that's more of the performance gym. But it's had various movements over the last 2 or 3 years.
You're right. How are you? Good to see you. You okay? All good. Good to see you. How are we? All good?
Good to see you, yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Working hard?
Yes. Had a little break with the family. Had a nice check-up with the specialist yesterday.
And everything on track?
Yeah, it was good, positive to be fair.
Okay.
Like on the schedule, still a bit of time to go.
Morning, Emperor.
nice to meet you. How are you? On track?
Yeah.
Hi, Chris. Good.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Have you met?
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you. All good? Yeah, good. How are you, mate?
No, I'm still looking at more in the building we showed.
Sometimes we do different.
The Scandinavian
Yeah, we will get into Kulisevsky. Then need to get it lower because this one is.
So that's cold. This one's warm.
This is not cold. It's easy. Is there, you can still run around? Thank you very much. This is where all the magic happens, huh?
So yeah, we try, yeah.
It looks good,
busy in
definitely,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got, set up here and then first thing we do.
Looking forward to it, special. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So obviously like for the grounds will work with your coaching team rotating around. The far pitch is pitch number 1.
Yeah.
That's got undersoil heating. That's got undersoil heating as well. This is pitch 3 and 4.
Yeah.
4 last year was generally used for rehab.
Yeah.
We've done a full rebuild on pitch 4. And then if it's a late one, we're coming back. So, as I explained to you,
So you kept the original building?
yeah, we kept the original buildings and we put this, what we call the lodge on the front here. So yeah, it's, if you're staying here, you want breakfast or a late lunch.
Unbelievable area.
Used for, you might want to do a team meeting.
Yeah.
You're staying here, tactics.
Yeah.
We've used this for Pilates. We've used this for yoga. We've used this for players at night when they come back and they play their board games.
Yeah.
They can use this for whatever you want to play. We'll go to this room here. So this is room 14.
I like this, perfect size. You know, you can sit there, running, lie yourself a little bit there. That's very nice.
Be careful on them steps. Family day. And then built in all of this surround here is all the speakers, so you can play music. Beautiful. These are all umbrellas. See about 85 people down here. 85? 85 people.
Yeah.
We get very good attendance.
Yeah. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, I was going to say, look at all that.
It's good. It's good. It's consistent.
Easy?
This is an indoor dome. Yeah. Used by very young age groups.
Yeah. No. But we need a better. Some better bat.
Yeah, it's a bat.
It is the bat. Yeah, okay, the bat.
One of my first jobs gets the new bats.
Yeah, is he asking for a paddle ball?
No, that'll be the next question. That's the next bit.
There was a plan I've seen before.
Yeah.
There was a plan. Yeah, it's a great space. Really versatile.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Podcast interviews, expos coming through everything. We'll go through that.
Go through to the other
Feel
screen,
welcome. I like that.
So this can be edited. So it's essentially a huge LED screen that we can put whatever content we want.
You? I can say hello to you, but you're filming me. Really looking forward to this massive challenge. Together with a lot of good people. I only heard good stuff about all the people here at the training ground. For me, if they lose the ball by trying, it's never a problem for me. Of course, I can react. It's natural, but they need to do that. But if they don't work hard, that I struggle more with that. No one can say they're not winners. The team and the players are winners. Now we need to do best see if we can become serial winners in the future.
And then arms crossed in front of you as well. Lovely, and then arms down as well. Exactly like that. And last big smile. Back.
Right, we're going to do the classic shirt holding.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, can you move the next background, please?
Wonderful. Perfect.
Yes. 2, 3, and 4 shots.
Go one more
Yeah,
time.
go
I'm going
once
to go a
more,
little
that's
bit
fine.
further back.
Yeah, land about there when you finish. That'd be great. Okay, so on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, go. 1, 2, and 4 shots.
Yeah, really good.
Nice one. Chloe, happy.
So there you go. That was behind the scenes of Thomas Frank in this last week or so, firmly embedding himself into Tottenham, the building itself. Yet it's a beautiful, as we've seen, complex they've got there at Hotspur. I've been lucky enough to visit there myself when we interviewed Jermaine Defoe around a year and a half ago. I'll come over to you, John, because we've had you on since the appointment of Thomas Frank. And I've to say, I think, John, one of the last shows you did with us, I think he was one of the favourites you put forward for the job that you'd like to see him become Spurs manager. He has become the manager. What have you made of this last week of interviews and getting him over the line, in the door, in the club, in his first words as Spurs head coach?
Oh, no surprises. He's exactly as you would envisage so far, The reason he was my favourite, there were only 3 ever in the running, wasn't there? Him, Areola and Silva. Those 2, they've not got, there's a little bit smoke and mirrors about them, with their the possession football, a little bit too similar maybe to Ange a little bit even. This guy, Thomas Frank is somebody I clued up on him a while ago. I've become fascinated with Brentford by the books of Nowhere Man, the Nowhere Men, which was about football scouts and No Danger in Paradise. It was a guy who writes for the Times, a really good writer, Michael Kelvin, I think, really good. And Brentford, because of the owner, really start to, shine as a very idiosyncratic, forward-thinking club. They dropped their academy system, and I've been around those academy systems. You can really imagine why a lot of clubs would just think, God, why do we need to bother with this? And they developed a B team. Obviously, very smart getting him in. It's all incremental there. He came in as that Smith. What was the guy? The Brummie, Dean Smith, was it? He'd come in as his assistant.
Right. Yeah, that's
and
great,
then Dean Smith went off to Villa and he took over. He's been there a while, so he's intelligent. He was in an intelligent situation, and everything he shows tactical flexibility in a way those other 2 managers who are alongside doesn't. He's obviously into winning by any means. Very methodical. He's obviously a very good psychologist. You can see he's really studied his psychology. He's a good modern football manager. He's one of these ones that increasingly the fashion seems to be it's guys who have not played at the highest level or at any sort of level seem to become managers now. I guess that started with Mourinho, was the first big one, and now there's been a few. Wenger wasn't. I think he was a right back in Alsace somewhere. I don't think he was ever a great player, but obviously he was a good manager. So so far no surprises. There is a possibility we've not bought anybody because Thomas Frank has said he wants to have a good look at the squad. He's already talked intelligently about Tottenham when he was Brentford's manager. It was very praiseworthy of the likes of Solanke and people, So it may well be, he said, hey, there's no rush. I'll come in July and I'll quickly make my mind up. I want to meet the players, because the thing that I might be completely wrong here. I've been on this show and said we look like a championship team, which we really did at times, But I can't believe those players were as bad as we thought. They've got to be better than that. And I think he'll want to meet them and see who's up for it, And I've got a feeling he'll knock them all into shape. It's interesting. Obviously, Son could go. We'll discuss that later, I guess. But, I'm interested with players like Manor Solomon coming back, who, had a great year at Leeds. They really desperate to sign him. It strikes me he's probably the only proper winger, guy who likes getting chalk on his boots at the club. We've got all these wide-ish players, Odegaard, Johnson, but, that's going to be interesting to see how Madam Solomon sets in. We know that Thomas Frank fancied Brennan Johnson anyway, and Archie Gray. He wanted both of them at Brentford. So he might be saying to Daniel Levy, and it'd be music to Daniel Levy's ears, whoa, hold the checkbook. Because I think I can get this kid playing at number 6, alongside Bentancur, So I'm sure there's an element of that. So I'm so far he's very smooth. The way he posed for the photos, he knows that's all part of the deal. I've got very tired of the Ange playing the old soldier. I'm really old, and I've seen I'm a football person, and this sort of and all the shtick about his dad. And I'm not, that's nice having that, he took the relationship with his dad and he did it all for the dad. But I got a bit tired of that. It's all like you're working an angle of sorts. I'm really not saying he's not a sincere man, but, I got tired of that, and you just want somebody who's going to be a good, sensible football manager, get the players playing and not be grumpy, be a good communicator, because having good I think that's the heart of what I'm saying. I don't mean it to be like a personal attack on Ange Postecoglou, who's a sort of nice geezer. I'm actually, there's a lot worse people you could bump into in life, I'm sure. But it's all about comms now, good comms. And as a club, we've had terrible comms. So I'm glad to see this Indian geezer coming in as well, this Finite bloke, Looks very corporate. I did have a good laugh with him and Daniel with the open neck shirts and all that caper. It was so corporate. They were trying so hard to look like a couple of relaxed but dedicated guys, and it was just totally corporate, But Tottenham's been such an enclosed club. You've got to second guess what they're thinking, what they're doing, and maybe now some of that can change. And you need a manager who's bright, who's eloquent, hasn't got a huge out of check sort of ego, that can work psychologically with the players, understand the bigger context. And I think Frank looks like a kind of guy can manage up as well as down.
That's going to be the real key, isn't it? In terms of that managing up and down, that's one thing that, as we know in the past, has been unfortunately an issue where some managers haven't been able to do that. I mean, Dave, coming around to you, we know that you did hold a fond affection for Ange Postecoglou. For many out there, look, I think we know this. There was a massive split amongst the fan base. Some did want Ange to be given that third season. What would have been in that mystery box? There were some that were ready for a change. It's been, I know, very emotional on here in these last 2 or 3 months. Now the new man has been appointed. Now you've had a chance to see his first couple of interviews, the behind the scenes. Dave, what's your general vibe on Frank through the door, and what have you made of his opening few words as Spurs head coach?
Yeah, look, pretty impressive, to be honest. Look, I'll be honest, when Thomas Frank was appointed, I was very underwhelmed. For me, it felt like a bit of a safe move, bit of a small-time sort of move, considering we're off the back of a Europa League. However, I have changed my opinion on him. I did have my doubts, but off the back of that interview, he sort of alleviated some of them doubts. One of my doubts was, you know, Thomas Frank is known for being very analytical, data-driven and stuff like that. Now, that can become very robotic and very boring very quickly if you can't convey your message across. But coming out of that interview, I think Thomas Frank, you know, sort of conveyed his message across very clearly to the fans. And I would hope that message will continue straight through to the players. Like, he came in here, he says what he's going to do, how he's going to do it, and what he needs to get it done. You know, it was very, very clear. I thought it was a very good interview. One thing I also appreciate was the tone of Thomas Frank's interview compared to recent managers like Jose Conte and even Postecoglou to a degree. When they came in, they sort of set off all the fire alarms in the building and set off panic stations because everything was about ripping up what has been there before and changing the culture, overhauling the mentality, you know, fixing a broken squad. And it was almost chaos before it even sort of got off to a start under them managers, whereas Frank sort of come in and he's taken a different approach. He's talked about building on from what we've achieved, not completely ripping up the script and rebuilding yet again. That's one cycle that Spurs fans are fed up of going through. So he's alleviated that concerns for me. You know, he mentioned building off the back of the Europa League win and bringing sustained success to the football club, which I think many people, it might have actually caught many people by surprise, because when we appointed Frank, I think a lot of the rhetoric was, you know, towards the league campaign that we've got to have stability and stuff like that. Whereas Frank has come in and he had two options. He could have chose the league campaign and started talking about stability and stuff like that and sort of downplaying the expectations or Tottenham. Or he could have, you know, used the Europa League. And I'm glad he used the Europa League as saying, look, this is where we are and this is what we're going to build off. You know, so for me, I think that's a huge positive. The style of play was another one for me. I don't think, what I said this, Frank can't just copy and paste what he's done at Brentford and that blueprint and bring it to Tottenham and expect it to work. You know, Nuno tried that from Wolves to Tottenham Hotspur, and he was gone within 4 months. At Tottenham, we expect to dominate games, you know, control possession, play entertaining football. So there was always going to be a case where Thomas Frank was going to have to adapt that style of play. And, you know, he said basically in his interview that he is going to play an attacking brand of football. You know, that's what the club is known for, a nod to the club's heritage, which I think was very good. You know, he says he wants players that take risks and stuff like that. So that's all music to my ears. And I'm not saying, you know, I don't want to get anyone confused out there. There's elements that he can bring from Brentford that's a quick fix into this Tottenham team. The stability around defensive set pieces. Brentford only conceded 2 last season. I think we conceded 12. So if he brings that, that'll automatically put him in a good stead, bringing that defensive foundation, along with some of the defensive structures. They're easy things that he can bring into Tottenham to give him that foundation that he had at Brentford to be able to build on. But I'm glad the recognition is there, that he's got better players to work with and that there is an expectation to play a better brand of football here, because at Brentford, they play counter-attacking, you know, most weeks. They're setting up to counter-attack the opposition. At Tottenham, teams set up against us counter-attacking. So I'm glad there's a huge recognition there, and he sort of alleviated my concerns there. But the big one for me, and I think this is the massive difference, Jose Conte, Postecoglou, when they arrived, they were almost presented to us as the Messiah, that they're going to change everything almost on their own. And that's one thing I've sort of always disagreed with. I've always mentioned that you have to have the right scouting structure, physio department, etc., all in place behind the scenes to help these guys. And Frank has come in and he's basically said, look, I can bring this, but it's not all down to me. You know, it's up to Daniel Levy, Vinay, Johan Lang, you know, to all be in alignment. Make sure that I get the right transfers that I need to help kick this on. There's a huge recognition that he cannot do it on his own. And I hope that's one thing that Spurs fans really take from that interview, because in years gone by, it's almost been like, oh, it doesn't matter what the club do, Jose, that's on you, make it work. Same to Conte, same to Postecoglou. And I've always said it can't keep continuing that way. At some point, you have to question the structures in place. And I'm glad that Frank has highlighted it, you know. So for me, someone like me who was maybe initially a skeptic, Thomas Frank has completely won me around completely off the back of that. I'm a full-on Francophile now. I'm joining the rest of you. But for me, like I said, and I'd usher, you know, Frank's words on that he said, you know, everyone's got to be in alignment. This is what I led my answer off. This is the quote from him. He says, the head coach is an important person, but if I don't have people around me, it's impossible. You can't do anything alone, in my opinion. If you want to do something quick, you can go alone. If you want to do something big or achieve something big, you go together. I think the alignment is key from top to bottom. And of course, it starts from Daniel, Vinay, and Johan, and me. And the more the four of us can be aligned, just like a unit, like an unbreakable unit, the stronger we'll be. So now, as usual, it's over to the club. Are you going to do the right processes and put the right foundations in place for it to work with this guy? Because I'd argue at Tottenham, we don't hire bad managers, but I don't think the right foundations have been in place. I don't think the right alignment has been in place. And lastly, what I will say with Thomas Frank just quickly is I think before Jose Conte Postecoglou almost came in with that old school narrative that they're in control of the football club and that the club have to dance to their tune. I think Thomas Frank and I think Jah Wobble made a great point. Frank realizes, you know, that he has to work with the club, and I think hopefully the end goal will be that the fact that he's willing to work with the club rather than just going to the club, I want this, this and this. I'm hoping that Daniel Levy will be more inclined to give him what he needs.
Yeah, we have to hope so. I think that's such a key point, isn't it? It's the fact they have to work within a structure. And to be fair, he has had that long-term relationship over, I think, 2 decades with Johan Lang. You'd hope that's going to play a really important part into how they are going to work behind the scenes. I mean, Ash, since we've last had you on, we've had the release of the Premier League fixtures for the upcoming, it's come around so fast, the 25-26 season. I just get your gauge on it for you, Ash. I know you've been on here since Frank's appointment. I mean, the way those fixtures have come out to some degree in the way they've been laid out early on, some look at them being a fairly favourable start for the manager. Is that how you would view them in terms of maybe if we look at the opening 10, they've got home to Burnley, away to City, home to Bournemouth? I mean, look, this isn't, you say this maybe isn't the most easiest to come in terms of West Ham away, Brighton, away, Wolves at home. We've typically struggled there. Leeds away as well, Villa at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home. But there's an opportunity, I think, in those first 3 to 4 games to maybe try and hit the ground running, because we do know, Ash, that when you look at his previous 2 clubs, and I know, again, different circumstances in both of those clubs, I think at Brentford, he won 2 of his opening 10 games there. And at his previous club before that, Bromby, I think he didn't win any of his first 8. So, I mean, how important is it, do you feel, Ash, given that we know in the build-up to Frank's appointment, I think there's a lot of people now that say majority are on board, but there was definitely a split amongst the Spurs fan base about what everybody wanted to see. How important do you feel it is that he will get off to a good start, and that could be there given the nature of the way those fixtures have come out?
Yeah, I think a good start is imperative. I think we spoke about already using the start almost like a springboard to kind of push on. And when you look at the previous manager in Ange Postecoglou, the first, I'd say, 8 to 10 games, he had a massive start, and the start he had was favourable to him as well. So I'm looking at that and I'm comparing the two, and I'm thinking if Thomas Frank can win a few games, he can get the fan base on board really quickly. So it's very important that he gets off to a winning start. He's got a few home games in there. There's not a huge amount of, big 6 or your quote unquote typical big 6 teams in there. However, there is no easy game in the Premiership. Every game is competitive. Every team has their way of setting up traps. There's loads of teams where I think now the onus is going to be on Frank to have the ball a lot. And now we're going to have to see what type of manager he is in terms of breaking down low blocks and figuring out ways to utilize some of those players that he has at his disposal. How can he unlock them to kind of beat those type of teams? Because when teams come at you, it kind of plays into the narrative that, Frank wants to play on transition. He wants to be direct. He wants to be a team where we are aggressive and we press high up as well. And sometimes that might be a high line as well at times, but we will be little facets where he might be, have little details where he might change things and tweak things for it to work. But at the same time, it's going to be a massive test for him. And I think that's the reason why he's come to this club, to kind of test his level. And I think the difference between his start at Bromby and his start at Brentford, he was relatively a new coach. And so now he's a lot longer or deeper into his managerial experience into his appointment. So I think he's going to use that to kind of build on what he's done already. And he's going to try and to bring some of that experience, hopefully, into Spurs. And then he'll find the way how to play this system to benefit Spurs. And also in the Championship, when he did have that bad start, the second season, the third season, he was trying to go straight for promotion.
Yep.
And in those promotion sides, they said, I know the second season he got third, but he had the most chances created. I think he was one of the highest teams in possession as well. He played with a 4-3-3 at times. I think in the season where he got promoted, he did tweak the 4-3-3. And so it's not going to be a massive jump to where he's trying to come over to Spurs to implement a similar style in 4-3-3. And I know that even in the Premier League of his last season for Brentford, he also played a 4-2-3-1, and sometimes he also played a 4-3-3. I think it was 40% he played like a 4-3-3, and I think the other 40% was a 4-2-3-1, and the rest of it was more or less a 5-3-2. So yes, he does change in game. He's able to, you know, tweak things in game as well as being a man manager, getting the best out of his players. He's going to have a lot of the youngsters as well. Him and Cochrane have been known to do a lot of development work with some of the youngsters. I know he helped develop players like Kobe Mainoo in the England setup, which is quite impressive. And there's a few other players as well he's worked with before. So I expect when he does come into that appointment, he's going to be able to familiarize himself with the players. And the best thing about the actual Frank appointment is he's not going to be wedded to say, this is my philosophy. He's going to look at the profiles and players that he actually does have. And he's going to say, how can I build around that? For example, you've got your Maddisons, like people are saying, could Maddison work in this system? Well, he's already had that conversation, you know, how's rehab going? How's things going? It was a short conversation, but you could tell he's the teacher, you know, his first profession was a teacher, and you could see that he's a learned man. He's a thinker. So he's going to think, how can I get the best out of these players? How can I challenge players like Maddison? Maddison likes to be challenged. I remember when he was at Leicester, when he had his he had to challenge himself with the Leicester manager, and the manager often tried to get the best out of him. I'm sure he's going to have a similar relationship with Thomas Frank, and he's going to have those type of the conversations where he's going to say, well, you know, my door's always open. If you're not happy that you're not picked, let's have a conversation. Let's speak about it. So that's the type of relationship that I'm looking forward to and looking to dive into deeper.
Yeah. On those relationships, I mean, two that many feel were going to be key conversations he's going to need to have, and John has already mentioned it. One being the conversation around Heung-Min Son, the other conversation being around Cristian Romero, where I think we've seen a lot of rumours with regards to Romero's future and what comes next. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audience. When we do come back, we're going to go straight to John and get his take and the panel's take of where we are with regards to exactly where we are on Romero, where we are on Heung-Min Son, and after that, we'll dig a bit deeper into players that Tottenham are reportedly looking to sign across the summer. Whilst we do that, we're going to go for our first break, and taking into that break, we're going to see a little bit of what could be a familiar sight. We're going to see Thomas Frank on the training ground for this next minute, and we'll be back after this very, very short break.
Yes! I like it, Frank. Brilliant. Yes. React. That's fine. A little bit higher, me. A little bit higher. So on the outside. In the bounce. Yes. Okay. Time. Brilliant, Miles, Brian. Now we're there. Let's go. Out, Vita. Yes. Vita. Now we play a little bit more on the outside. And here where you went down there, where Chris, he just needs to go higher. Okay. So we fill into really good. So get those positions and make sure, for example, the outside in the back three, whoever that is, make sure we are high enough so we can take the ball forward. Then we'll have a back four who's defending. So if we make the breakthrough, we can attack 6 versus 5. If we lose it, we defend 4 versus 5. Love it, Wes! Play! Frankie, perfect position for the bounce, okay? Really, really good.
There you go. That was Thomas Frank in action on the training ground. Slightly different to what we've been used to in the last year or two with regards to obviously Angie's technique again. But it will be an interesting shift for the players, and there's important conversations that need to be had. Of course, we've had the news in this last week or so. Tottenham have confirmed the permanent signing of Matisse Tell, where Thomas Frank has personally said He is very, very excited about Matisse Tell arriving at the club on a permanent deal. He said that I think he's going to be a very talented player that can play across the front four positions. He's a goal scorer that we can develop even further to be more consistent in his all-round game, but has also, more importantly, consistently landed in the right positions in the box. So I'm very much looking forward to working with him. And it's fair to say that already, for those that are unaware, Matisse Tell has been making an impact on international duty, where he scored the winner to send France into the European Under-21 Championship semi-final with a fine winner, which again will give, I think, Frank some food for thought. But John, I want to come back around here if I can. Just say, guys, thank you so much for all your support for Last Word On Spurs. We have got over 6,500 of you that are watching us live. Keep liking, keep subscribing. We're joined by musical legend Jah Wobble. We're joined by Ash over at Spurs Kings TV. Please give those guys a like and a subscribe, and also the brilliant David the Irish Hotspur. Fine work over there across summer. Please, again, I implore you, please keep liking, please keep subscribing, what David's doing over there and in general. John, let's discuss one of the conversations he's got to have, and that's in regards to Heung-Min Son and what comes next for Sonny. So far, it's fair to say there's been very much silence around what the future holds for him. There was no mention from Frank about Sonny in his opening interview with the club, but then again, look, he didn't mention the likes of Romero, Kulusevski, Van der Ven, Vicario, Porro, Yves Bissouma, who are also among the senior players. I mean, what's your take for you, Jar, in what the future holds for Heung-Min Son? Obviously, the club took that option about his contract, but doesn't stop the speculation.
Now, I suppose there's a chance that he meets Son. They're both very nice people. They could well get on. And Thomas Frank thinks, you know what? If he thinks he can get performances from him, he might want to keep him on. I'm sure the decision will be left as much with Son, even though they've renewed the contract as much as anybody else. I'm sure they wouldn't keep him if he was really keen to go. But having said that, I think it's more likely he's got this contractual obligation to play in South Korea in against Newcastle, I think, and that's probably that. So I hope he goes. I think, like a lot of us, one of the best ever, the Tottenham legend, obviously.
Oh, yep.
Great, obviously a really nice fella as well.
Yep.
Tremendous fella. He finally, I prayed before that, please let him, come on, let him be picking that trophy up at the end of the night. Come on, if there's if there's a God, it's all, please. And it was great for it to happen. Now's the perfect time for him to go. So I think he'll be going. Romero will be staying, because the club will want at least 70 mil. He's a World Cup winner. He's a real winner. He made all the difference in that final. He's a nasty bit of work, which we all like, don't we? He's our nasty bit of work, So he ain't going anywhere. Real Madrid have bought that kid from Bournemouth, right? So they've got him in there.
Poison.
Yeah, I had no idea of his background, and he scored against us. I just thought he was some 16-year-old kid from the South Coast. I didn't realise he sort of had this.
They still score against us, though.
He still scored against us, yeah, But he's apparently been well fancied by lots of clubs for a long time, so they've got him. So we all know it's Atletico, and yet again they'll be like, Teddy Bass at the end of Sexy Beast, saying to Tottenham, give you a tenner, basically we give you 30 mil in add-ons. It's like, fuck off, get out of there, not going to happen. Fuck off, stop wasting. Don't even waste your breath, So he won't be going anywhere. I wouldn't think. He might be really kicking off, but I'm sure that could be dealt with. You maybe say, offer him a new contract, even more money or something. You do something that makes him happy, and you say to him, look, just give us a year, and he's a very important guy. One of the reasons I'm very excited about Thomas Frank coming is I don't think we're going to have tons of players laid off with injuries. So we've got this good squad of players that are going to be fit. I think, we're going to have some injuries because that's what happens, but that was mad last year, the amount of recovery runs and sprints that was happening. So that's not going to happen. So in a nutshell, Son will go, I think, and I hope he does. and they should build a bloody statue for him. He's one of the nicest players to ever put on a Tottenham shirt. You know, what a great. What to me, he's underrated. When Kane was out in our Champions League run, his movement up front was just exceptional. You know, I think Poch gave him a little bit of, you know, he'd run those channels. For me, one of the reasons he's not been as good this last few years, he's never good when you stick him out as a winger. He's a wide striker, and you've got to give him some room to move. And I think at times, you know, last year with this system with Ange as those two wide players, it didn't suit him. You know, it means you can't use your positional sense to get inside, get on the half turn, to find those spaces of a striker, which he can do. You know, I suspect his legs are probably gone. You know, hey, if he gets together with Frank and they decide to give it one more year, and Frank thinks he could help him, I'd be delighted. But I don't think that'll happen. So I think it's most likely Son will go, and everyone will just, you know, welcome him back anytime, because he's a Spurs legend, and he finally picked a trophy up, which was lovely. Romero, I wouldn't think's going anywhere, simply because no one's going to pay 70 mil for him. I wouldn't have thought. You know, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how that does pan out, because we are hearing reports that Diego Simeone is calling Romero daily. I mean, is that even allowed? You know, some of the reports you do hear out there is quite baffling. I mean, David, come round to you on this situation with the captain. I can see John there mimicking. Go on, John, what are you saying there on that point?
Yeah, well, at that point, you know, you get on the... Hey, Diego, you're phoning our player all the time, are you? Well, you know, they ain't going to get you nowhere. Every time you phone him, every time I hear you fucking phoned him, I'm going to put another 2 million on the price. See ya.
We've got to put Joe on those negotiations. We have to. To come over to you, Dave, on the point. I mean, what's quite interesting is, you know, the take around the feeling of Sonny departing. You know, for me, I look at the Son situation. I think I would hate for Son to stay at the club and it peter out next season. And I don't want fans to remember Sonny for a decline of him. I want people to remember him at his absolute peak. And many people in their mind now will only remember Bilbao. They remember Sonny lifting the trophy, getting the scar on his head, and having that moment of adulation with the fans. And I would love the fairy tale to kind of be intact and allow him to move on. But then there's the other side of things as to whether Frank will maybe think, as Jar said, get him in pre-season, have a conversation with him. Is there a different element to Son that we maybe are not seeing that maybe we would see under Thomas Frank? I mean, that's an intriguing one. And also on that point, Dave, so that you cover Romero as well. 56 minutes it took, Dave, after the announcement from Tottenham about Frank. We then get the Romero statement, which many may feel there's the disrespect there to Frank to have done it at that point in time. Why could it not have come before that? You know, I've got my feelings. I think that was very much deliberate at the timing of Romero's post and the way it was framed. I mean, what's your take on both the captain and the vice captain and their respective futures this summer?
Well, I mean, it's concerning if we're going to let both of them go in one window. I mean, that's a huge concern. But to your point about Sonny, I mean, we don't want to get it into the Hugo Lloris situation where, you know, the following season, you know, he was completely done. He wasn't agile enough. And, you know, he ended up bearing the brunt for a lot of our defeats and, you know, stuff like that. And we don't want Son to get into the same situation. So for me, if I'm Son, I'm probably looking at it and going, look, I stayed when everyone else bailed. I delivered that trophy for the fans. You know, sometimes in life, things are about the right timing in life. And I think this is the right time for Son to sort of bow out and be remembered for that legend, that hero that he is, and go down in history rather than the way Hugo Lloris is remembered, which was, you know, old, in decline, making excuses, stuff like that. So I think the timing is right for Son to probably leave. However, my concern is Tottenham knew a few years ago that this situation was approaching where eventually we'd be going post Kane and Son era. You're not going to have the two of them to drag you through games anymore. And my concern is just that we don't really have any other player in the team that I have confidence to go, yeah, okay, it's okay to let Son go because he's going to drag us through games. He's going to be that match winner. He's going to put points on the board. You know, for me, that's a huge concern in letting Son go. But the club have time on this one. They don't really have to rush into a decision now. I think, you know, like Jah Wobble said, he's contracted to go to the tour out in Korea. So, you know, we know Daniel Levy and his money-making schemes anyway. He was never going to let him go before that tour. Even if he wasn't contract, he was still going to be here until the end of it. And I think that then gives Tottenham time to maybe judge him on the pre-season. Because the reason why I say that is you go back to Conte a couple of years ago when we were out there in Korea on pre-season tour. He was poor in pre-season, had a poor season. Last pre-season tour, he was poor, had a poor season. So for me, I think they'll get a good gauge off him in pre-season to see whether it is a case, whether it was down to Postecoglou, the tactics in so many games, or whether it's a case where he just doesn't have the legs anymore. He's starting to slow up. That physicality is a little bit in decline. And that explosive speed that made him that difference maker in the Premier League is maybe declining. And I think that's one that the club will have time to weigh up. But right now, looking at the situation, it's sort of reading between the lines. It looks like there's going to be an exit on the card for Sons. And I smelled this when they only offered him a contract extension last year. I was sort of concerned about that. If they really had plans on keeping around, why not offer him a new, 2-3 year contract? So that was concerning for me. And to be honest with you, we know Daniel doesn't like breaking the 200k a week at Tottenham. He's on that. So, if he gets a new contract, he's probably going to want more. So probably all the signals probably tell me this is coming to an end. When it comes to Cristian Romero, look, the timing of his statement was blatant, wasn't it? It's sort of saying, look, Frank, I'm not on board, and he's doing his best to get a move. However, I will say to Spurs fans, having ambition to go and win trophies and compete for them consistently is not a bad thing. And for me, I get fans get upset when they see stuff from players like that. But it's our best players that are in them situations. It was Harry Kane before that, and we can't keep getting into a situation where we're selling our best players, because the reality is you lose Romero. Danzo's a good player, yeah, but he's not Romero's level. Neither is Dragusin, so you don't have the ready-made guy to really step in and replace what Cristian Romero gives us. Not only is he a little scoundrel on the pitch, and Jah Wobble was absolutely correct. We didn't have him in that Europa League final. We wouldn't have won it. We just wouldn't. And that's the moments where he steps up. And I know a lot of people have their feelings around Cristian Romero, but the reality is he's one of the best players in our team, if not the best player in our team right now. If he brings that bit of steel to the team. If we take him out, you'll have that bit of weakness. We want to play this attacking brand of football. Well, at the end of the day, Romero, he's our best ball player out from the back as well, to a large degree, in terms of centre-back options. So for me, when I look at the situation, I actually compare it to the Postecoglou and Kane situation. I think this is Frank's first big test.
Right.
We took Kane from underneath Postecoglou. Postecoglou would still be in the job today if he had Harry Kane to work with, and probably maybe another trophy on the table. We sold him. If we sell Romero underneath Thomas Frank, who is known for his defensive foundations and stuff like that, it's going to end up in the exact same way under Thomas Frank if you do the same thing. Postecoglou was known for tackle football. They took our best attacker out and made his job hard. And if they do the same with Romero, they're going to make Frank's job hard. So I urge Thomas Frank as well to get the guy in the room, keep a level head, realize you're going to need this guy moving forward, and get him on board.
Has he already disrespected him, Dave, in your opinion, by doing that tweet at 56 minutes after his appointment? Has he already disrespected him, Dave?
Yeah, look, it's disrespectful to a certain degree, but I would hope that Thomas Frank maybe looks at it and goes, maybe Romero has looked at the appointment and maybe isn't sure what my ambitions are for the club, and he doesn't see maybe me winning trophies, and that's maybe why he's made that point. But the reality is, if I'm Thomas Frank, for the betterment of my own good, you've got to try and get the guy on board and try and sign on that dotted line.
Your gut feeling, like Jar said in his opinion, he thinks Son might go, Romero stays. Where are you on that barometer for you, Dave? What do you see that? How do you see it panning out?
Look, to be honest, I don't think Atletico Madrid will be the only suitors for Romero. I think, if people get wind that Tottenham are potentially willing to cash in, I think you'll get more suitors to the table, because for me, I think he's one of the best centre-backs in world football. So, look, I would hope Romero stays. I think Tottenham won't be forced into selling them. I think Daniel Levy will probably keep his composure and go, well, look, I can cash in on him January or next summer as well. He's got 2 years left on his contract. I'm not in a rush. And for me, look, I think maybe that's where we let ourselves down with the Harry Kane situation. I think maybe if we'd have given Kane that first year on the Postecoglou, we might be able to change his mind. And I think you could do the same with Romero if we can keep him here for this year.
Do you agree, Ash, on that point? It feels like this is going to be Frank's first big test as Spurs head coach, when these two guys come back respectively from pre-season, gets them in a room and understands what is next for both of those players and how, if he needs to, work on their situations personally. How do you see that, Ash, panning out?
I feel like there's a few moving parts to this. I think the Romero situation, I would reckon that Simeone would have had conversations a long time ago. I think even from that World Cup, there's loads of fans questioning Romero's loyalty. Every time it came to Argentina, he was ready to jump on the plane. And then on the way back, or not even the way back, a week before, you know, he'd be injured, he'd be out. And so that really peed off a lot of fans. And I think last season, it looked like from some fans' perspective, not all fans, some fans' perspective, like Romero got up for the big games, but the other games, you'd see like a lack of sometimes concentration where he wouldn't be his, you know, old self, because he is a top player. He's a player that on his day, he's unbeatable. You need that, as Irish was saying, that steel, that aggression. And even Postecoglou alluded to it. He said, I wish whatever Romero has or Kuti has, I wish I could just put that in every single player. And I think he was talking about that Arsenal game when he ended up scoring a goal and he just took it upon himself, used his initiative, and he acted like a real leader. Even in that final, he was in Harry Maguire's head all game. And he just played him out of it. And so that type of mentality, that type of leadership, that type of aggression, we wanted to see that as a Spurs fan base, week in, week out. And as you said before, going over the same point, that message when he put out about Postecoglou was very telling. So for me, that's clear that the player wants to move away. He really does. And I saw it with Dimitar Berbatov when he wanted to go to Manchester United, when like he wasn't getting his way, he wasn't getting his move. He started down tools in as well. And I really was a massive fan of Dimitar Berbatov.
Dimitar was unbelievable.
I didn't want to let him go, bro.
Yeah, it was
he was one of my favorites, and that was heartbreaking that we let both him
and King
and King go, just
in the same window.
And now we're having the same conversation, because I agree with Irish in terms of you can't let both of them go, can you? Surely not. So I honestly think, irrespective, it's a hard decision. I think when Frank comes in, that's the conversation those two need to sit down and have. He needs to find out where his head's at. And then it's about kind of, you know, meeting somewhere in the middle and kind of like being, you know, professional about things and saying, look, at the end of the day, we pay your wages. You've got a job to do. And if we want to keep hold of you, I need to make sure that you're 100% on board. So he actually is really good, as we said at the start, in terms of psychology. He's a master at it, you know. So he's going to be able to read the room and quickly understand what Romero's needs are, what the actual issue was, because he was having a go at the board. Is the team being backed properly? And does Romero want out because he wants trophies? He wants to be in Champions League week in, week out. And does he feel this is the right club that has the same ambition as him? And maybe that's the reason why he threw his toys at the pram. And some of his teammates, of course, for Argentina, they're probably getting his ear. I know Simeone was saying to like the Paul, a few other players that play for Argentina, to say, look, you know, prod Romero and try and get him over to Atletico, because we do the same as well. You know, when it was Odebert, you know, for France, we say under 21, we say come to toe. You know what I mean? Tell him to sign when it was between Chelsea and Manchester United, and he ended up, you know, going with us. And today, obviously, he scored that goal, 3-2. France won, and the under 21 squad, and they progressed to the semi-final. And all of a sudden, people are starting to realize Tell's potential, what he could bring. Do you know what I mean? But going back to the conversation, we're going back into Son now. I think with Son, again, it's slightly concerning. You know, it's quite concerning because Son didn't have a great season. Let's be honest. He didn't have a great season. And he still produced between 17 and 19 goal contributions, which is a hell of a lot for someone that's not playing too well, because we know Son's potential. And the worry is, if we let a Son go, will the club replace Son with adequate cover, someone that we could push on? And the problem was with Kane, was when Kane went, I think the onus was more on the team. I agree. I think that the goals were going to be spread out. I think that was the idea, that it wasn't going to be on one man. And some fans felt maybe, Kane maybe wanted to move on. So it's a similar situation to Romero. And some fans also thought, would he work for Postecoglou's tactics in terms of pressing? Now, with Son, it's completely different because we think maybe Frank could get more out of Son because Son, like Tel, is not a winger. Son, like Tel, is not a centre forward. He's somewhere in the middle, which JW's already alluded to. So if you're looking at how Brentford use their forward line, their front line, putting Son in that position, is he going to score more goals? Is he going to make more assists? Is his decision-making going to be better? Is his spatial awareness going to be heightened because he's in a familiar position or the edge of the box where we know he has that curler, the outside of his foot, top corners, we used to see that day in, day out. So that pre-season Irish was talking about, like maybe Frank wants to look at that. But at the same time, we have a squad depth conundrum where, we've got to have a certain amount of foreign players out. And so is Son the sacrifice the club have already discussed with Thomas Frank before he's even come in? Has that decision already been made? And has it been Son's wish as well? Because Son, we've got to think from Son's point of view. Does Son want out? Has Son think, I've fulfilled my legacy, I've got the trophy, I signed the 6-year deal when Nuno was around, when things weren't favourable, I've been loyal, I've done my time, and now I want a new challenge because, let's face it, I'm at the twilight end of my career. So these are the type of things that are going through my head. I'm sure the club have sat down and they've planned well ahead.
Let's hope they have. I mean, like I say, it's going to be a very interesting conversation that he's going to have with both the captain and the vice captain. And maybe, look, I'm not suggesting with regards to Romero that he's a bad egg, but, many have alluded to the fact it's going to test that no dickheads policy, which Frank has, that ultimately how much is Romero really, really willing to kick up a fuss to get a move? And I think that is going to be really key over the summer. And I think we will know very early on how that is going to work out. But like every Tottenham manager, whenever they come through the door, there's like an instant challenge to face and meet. And to be fair, that's exactly what Thomas Frank has got. So look, we are going to go for our next break of the show. And for our listeners that are on audio, we've got over 6,500 of you that are watching the show live. Thank you so much, as always, for your incredible support for Last Word On Spurs. Please keep liking. Please keep subscribing. We're joined by music legend, Jah Wobble. I love Jah on this show. We've got him over the watershed, which means he can say what he wants. He can do what he wants on this show. We're joined by the wonderful Ashmatic from the Spurs Kings. Please give those a like and a subscribe. And also Dave at the Irish Hotspur, still also very busy throughout the summer. Please keep liking. Please keep subscribing. Before we do discuss players at Tottenham are being linked within this window, a reminder for those out there, if you don't know already, we are delighted to partner with NordVPN's little baby, not literally a baby, called Saily. They're an affordable eSIM data for international travel, and this saves you money on roaming fees whilst traveling, provides you with a safe and secure internet connection whilst on your travels, and you can also switch your device's virtual location to back home so you can access all your content from, again, your living room. So I would suggest this is great for those that are on the move. They're going away over the summer and still want to watch their favourite programmes and don't want to pay over the odds on roaming fees. So make sure you check them out. You can use the code LWS at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase. The link is in our description. You can hit that QR code on our screen for those that are watching this show live. Right. Jah, I'm going to steer the show back over to you because actually on that point Ash mentioned there, we have got a couple of issues that we are going to face in some with regards to the homegrown quota. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to give me your your feelings around the homegrown quota. But there's been links, John, we were discussing the back end of the show. Well, I say the back end, the backstage of the show that we may have to bring potentially the likes of not that everyone wants them to come back, a Harry Winks or an Oliver Skip or what we're going to do. But the latest note that's been linked, Jar, is that of Kyle Walker-Peters. I mean, what's your feeling about the fact that Spurs are going to maybe have to dip into this market of bringing back somebody that is going to help them with this homegrown policy?
Well, he's not the only. The latest one is Dennis Serkin, who left Tottenham. I don't know if it's a soft C or a hard C, but Dennis Serkin. I'm steering that somewhere. You know where I'm taking that, didn't you? But yeah.
Only you could do that. Only you could do that.
No, I'll be good. But Dennis Serkin as well, he was a really decent player, as I recall, with us, left-sided.
Yep.
So I suppose needs must. you know, and he's definitely he's a good player, Kyle Walker-Peters. We all know that. He's very neat and tidy. He looks like one of the best players on that Southampton team. I believe the best man, is that right? I saw on Twitter, maybe it's load of nonsense, best man of Solanke. I think they're friends. Maybe that's not true. I think maybe that's a false memory even. I do have them from time to time. But you owe me money. No, there's a false memory. But I think they must be good friends. So needs must, you know. The thing nobody sort of said, it makes you think, doesn't it, for a big club to not have enough homegrown players for the home trained, kind of tells you something, doesn't it? It's what it tells you. There's not been proper thinking process, proper planning process at all for that. That's the thing, you know, and that leads back into the Romero, you know, which is, you know, Romero is obviously serious. I don't think that's, you know, he wants to go to Atletico, where Simeone would have said, "You come here, we'll win La Liga and we'll win the Champions League as well. We'll win the lot. You come here." Two serial kind of winners, two real tough guys, and he'll be like Ramos was at Real Madrid, wasn't he? He's a real tough guy until he met Dyer. Was it Ramos, the Real Madrid defender?
It was.
Dyer out tough guy, didn't he? Really put that great tackle in. But what a player Ramos was. He never looked like he was massive, a bit like Romero, but had a lot of fighting spirit. Will win all these aerial duels, you know. But anyway, going back on that one. But the thing is, he want to go because he'll just see this club's just the same. I've been here a few years. He would have seen a lot of stuff go on at Tottenham. You know, if you look at any old Tottenham players, what they've got to say about the club, someone like that, Jason Cundy, isn't it, who was the Chelsea sort of player, come to Tottenham. You read what he had to say about Tottenham and what the training facilities were like, etc., etc. It's always shocking, and you always think, God. As ever, I went to see us play those years, you know, game in, game out, following the club, and they absolutely weren't really serious. So on the start of the season, when you're thinking we can get top four, or stupidly we can win the league, you already, anyone in the know knows you haven't got a chance because you're not serious, and it gets quite complex for this whole issue, because that's the heart of the matter, isn't it? With this homegrown thing, is that you know, the clubs. There's not a proper method hasn't been followed, and that's the thing that, you know, with the board changes, you know, is that finally happening, you know? But so you hear this one, that Donna Cullen's gone, Scott Mutt's gone, this Vinay guy's come in, but apparently there's a new guy as well, Peter something Sharrington or something.
Peter Sharrington, non-exec on the board, who
I believe is kind of, maybe I'm wrong, I think worked more for Joe Levy's firms. Maybe that's completely wrong.
I think you're right.
So you think he's kind of, that's probably quite a power base there, really, Joe Levy, and you kind of got a feeling that's probably a key person. And so for all the cosmetic change, is it still a case the purse strings when it comes to proper marquee signings, like Dave's talking to and Ash is talking about, guys who will Roy the Rovers guys, and they don't come cheap. They're few and far between, but they win games for you. They win games, you know, and that's, you know, if you keep Romero, it's all about that great spine. If you bring in a number 6, a proper gigantic, you know, proper number 6 player of the level of Rodri, I don't think there are so many around, but you bring in a proper number 6, and you bring in maybe another proper number 9, you know. You go out, and it's at Tottenham now, we've actually, compared to last season and the year before, we've actually got enough bodies, I think, although not enough homegrown. There's 25, 26 players here now, you know. There are 2 or 3 players for every position. But what you haven't got is that absolute world class. You can always find a team solution to that, but we haven't really got, you know, that guy that, you know, the Gareth Bell, Modric, Berbatov, you know, these kind of players. You know, even Robbie Keane wasn't quite, you know, great player, terrific player, but even he wasn't quite in that league. You know, he was a very, very good player, but these other guys, you're talking that from being elite to being absolute world class sort of striker, you know. And so I wouldn't hold my breath on Tottenham going out, you know, bringing in, you know, absolute star players. I think EZE might be the most they might bring in. I've got a feeling he probably wants to come, but I think with Tottenham, you know, you end up in situations where agents of players are saying, well, come on, are you serious? You know, and you used to see this in the music business with some, when you had the big record, the major company system, and whenever there'd be a little delay, you knew there's something wrong. You knew there's something wrong when a deal's not going through, you know, and everyone starts getting nervous. And, you know, I'm not sure everybody, you know, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall in the board meetings at Tottenham now, you know, and I wonder if there's one person there who's actually got more power than you might think, who can really pull things back, you know, from lots of money being spent. And what they would be looking for is, we want this coach, this new guy to come in, and he's going to make all these ordinary players we've got a lot better. He's going to save us tons of money. You know, that's the sort of fear, and it'll be working with young players. And there's a sort of ominous silence now with us. You know, so you know, with all this Tottenham are preparing a bid. You know, I am preparing my bid. You know. You know, you just go and, you know, you go on the car forecourt, didn't you? And you make your fucking bid. You know, I'm preparing my bid. You know, and so we're going down to Messi and the Bournemouth winger and MBEUMO. We're going to re-sign Walker Peters and Sirkin. You know, and of course those guys, you know, that SEMENYO and MBEUMO. What I know is they're fast. They're powerful and they've got great skill. You know, they've got great feet. You know, that's SEMENYO. He's got really great feet. You know,
tremendous.
So you know, you go and get them. Unless, of course, you've got such fantastic data and you know, contacts. You go and find someone in the French league or something. You know, the way Leicester used to do. You know, you go and buy some guy for 15 mil, and I just don't think that's. I think everyone knows the price of everything now, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how it is.
It's going to be really key, isn't it? I mean, I think Jar makes so many valid points there with regards to the issues that we've got, Dave, in regards to the, as you know, homegrown quota alone. And I know at the moment people would love to see a star signing come through the door, but I mean, until we do get this issue sorted around the homegrown quota, it's a bit of a problem for us. I mean, there has been talk over the weekend to be really up to date on EZE and how that situation is panning out at the moment, because we do know there's been this kind of long-standing interest from Tottenham in Eberechi EZE, and reports over the weekend have suggested that Palace would now be open to accepting EZE's release clause being paid in instalments. There's already reports out that Frank likes EZE and the attacker is firmly back on Spurs' agenda. We know he's been long after, or Tottenham been long after him. They first expressed their interest back in 2019 when he was playing for QPR. Now apparently Spurs know exactly what they'll need to do to land his signature, and Steve Parish apparently is open to this clause being paid in different installments. So I think Palace would want around 25 to 30 million paid up front, and then 30 million to 35 being paid over 2 installments. There's also an £8 million to be paid in performance-related bonuses in EZE's release clause. We know, as Jars touched upon as well, there's interest in SEMENYO, where Tottenham have made inquiries about the forward, but are not proceeding with the move for the Ghanaian forward at present. It's led to believe that Bournemouth are thought to value the player in excess of 70 million. And as we understand at the time of recording this show, Man United are firmly in the driving seat for Brentford star Bryan MBEUMO, despite at the moment there being no links to an agreement at the time of this show between United and Brentford, and the fact that it did feel at one point with Frank coming into Tottenham that might have swayed maybe MBEUMO's views, but that seems to have gone quiet. I mean, where are we in your mind at the moment with regards to these players who are being linked with, Dave?
Look, I'd like us to sign a couple of them. I think they drastically improve our fortunes on the pitch, drastically improve our front line, and give us a chance to at least sort of, kick on post Kane and Son era and not feel that massive impact. I think, too, of SEMENYO, EZE, and MBEUMO would really do that for Tottenham Hotspur. But I'm not going to lie, like, one of my biggest concerns about bringing in Thomas Frank in the first place was that with Postecoglou, I think there was a general consensus amongst everybody. We needed to bring in 4 or 5 quality players to really kick on next year if we have any chance of even competing next year under Postecoglou. And they sort of pulled the rug on that, brought in Thomas Frank. You know, they brought in a data-led scouting model a couple of years ago under Paratici. That's what he operated off at Brentford. And I think, you know, one of my cynical Spurs thoughts in me was that's why Tottenham brought him in. They're not going to go and spend massive this window like Spurs fans are expecting. And that they're going to use this guy to continue on a data-led model and sort of develop players as we go along. But I think there's a massive danger in that to a degree. You know, you can't come out as the chairman and say you want to go and win a Premier League and the Champions League and then give this guy players that you have to develop to try and do that. Because you've placed the expectations now on him. You've placed the expectations on the forward, on the football club. So it's now up to him to go and follow through in the transfer market. What my biggest concern is, again, I know some people say, man, that's a bit conspiratorial. Look how our transfer window started. We've given Ben Davies a 1-year contract extension. Now, I know some people are dressing it up like, well, we've done that so we could get resale value. Great. But if you're Ben Davies, you ain't giving up 85k a week. No other club's going to offer you that. So why are you going to leave? You're not. You're going to be here for next year. I'm sorry, but that doesn't exactly stink of wanting to kick on. You know, you bring in Matisse Tal. Now, look, hugely talented kid. But he didn't solve a problem last January, and he's not going to solve our problem this season, you know, in terms of needing consistent output, you know, in that forward line. He's a player that you're going to have to develop, that there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be rawness in front of goals. And then the next announcement is 4 Levy Towers coming in, you know. And you look at the likes of Liverpool, Vlerts, Frimpong, you look at the likes of Man City, Coop Miners, Rinders, Nori, players like that, Chelsea, the Lab, United, Cunha, now potentially MBEUMO. You look at these other clubs around us, they're moving, they're improving their squads. Meanwhile, at Tottenham, we're sitting here, we're preparing, we might do this and we might do that, and I'm absolutely fed up with it. You know, everyone goes, just relax, be patient. I heard it all last summer, Ricky. Where did it get us? You know, patience got us absolutely nowhere. It was a very underwhelming window. And the reality is we're missing out on some stars that have already joined some of these other top clubs. They're all in there being proactive. They're all in there using the transfer window to improve their weaknesses and get ready to go next season. We used the whole transfer window to piss about announcing a manager we could have done weeks before that. You know, now we're sitting there, oh, we might do this, we might do that. God's sake, just go and get someone in the door, whet the fans' appetite by bringing in a big name. You'll up your ticket sales, you'll up the jersey sales, everything else. Go and get the thing done. I'm fed up pissing about in the transfer windows why most other clubs are moving. And the clubs that aren't moving are the teams that blow us. I'm sorry, but the teams we're trying to catch, the teams that Daniel Levy wants to compete with are moving. And that's what we have to start doing, be more decisive in this window. To be honest with you, I think we might get one star player and the rest will be underwhelming signings to a large degree. And then by doing that, you're throwing Thomas Frank straight under the bus, to be honest with you, because they're asking this guy to develop players while trying to win a Premier League, while trying to win a Champions League. It's impossible to do. You need ready-made players to go that can deliver on the big games and the big moments. So go and do it.
You know what? I mean, I share that passion, Dave. I really, really do. And I just wonder, I mean, Ash, how do you view the situation they've got at the moment with regards to bringing it back a second? I know people don't want me to say this, but this homegrown issue they've got, how much is that a big problem right now? I can see Chara's let his head back thinking, oh, Rick, don't say that. But I mean, is it a big problem, Ash, in your opinion, that this is now what's stopping us from going out and signing one of these big players that would give ultimately the fans a massive, massive lift for the summer? Because I think, you know, when you come out, as David said there, the club have come out and said they want to win the Premier League, they want to win the Champions League, and yet it does feel that the clubs that we are going to be competing with, if we are looking to win the bloody thing, they're all making their moves in the market. They're all making their moves.
Yeah, there's a couple things, I think. I think with the homegrown issue is separate to club trained, which goes into Champions League. How many players have to be registered to be club trained? Because if you don't meet their requirements of a certain amount of club trained players, then you can't bring a squad of 25, I believe. I think you lose out on 3 or 4 players.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's where the issue is. And that's why the focus is at the moment on bringing in a Kyle Walker-Peters, for example, because then that will allow us to include 3 more players into our actual squad. So I think that's the reality of it. And I think the panel called it right, you know, because it's poor planning. You know, this should never be a situation for Spurs, but I know we're not alone. I think Newcastle had a similar situation where they've had a few homegrown issues or non-club trained players. I think they were even looking at one of our goalkeepers, Forster, to come and join them just so they can get more players into their squad, because they're in Champions League as well. So, but it's not an excuse, by the way. I'm not trying to bail this club out by any stretch of imagination. Also, like just coming back around to like what Dave was saying in terms of, you know, we need more than one needle mover. I think that's what Dave's going at, because the front line, yes, they did have goals, but that actual statistic was inflated because we used to win games by 3 or 4 goals, but there was a lot of games where we lost by 1 goal. And so there was a lot of issues in that front line. And our top scorer, Son got 7 goals or 7 to 9 goals in the league. So for me, if that's one of your, you know, talisman, he's only and then you got Solanke only scored in about 9 goals as well. That's glaring issues. And then Johnson, when he did score goals, he didn't really contribute anything else on the actual pitch. So then you've got a quality issue there in terms of players holding onto possession so we can sustain attacks. I thought that was a real issue. Players that could beat players 1v1. I thought that was an issue as well. I thought sometimes when we're trying to create chances against low blocks, we didn't have the players that could facilitate that. And also, one thing that's not really spoken about a lot from journals, tacticals, panelists on YouTube, quality of finishing. Now, the quality of finishing, some people will say, what's quality of finish? Quality of finish would be an inside of your foot finish, you know, finesse shot, chipping over the goalkeeper, dinking it, top corner, volleys, half volleys, curlers, finishing in a crowded box when you're playing against a low block. What players can do all of those in our team? And then you start to struggle because some of our players, when it's a pressurized situation, for example, Tell, if he's a young player, like Dave was saying, he's quite raw, and he did score a goal today. But there was times in the game I saw for the French under-21s, he had a chance. And when he's pressed and he hasn't got a lot of time, is he a natural finisher? No, he's not. He needs to work at that side of his game. And if we are trying to say we are this team where we're going to be a Premier League winning team, a Champions League team where we win it, and we're playing the likes of PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, we're going to be up against that top level elite forward finishers. And it's a squad issue as well. It's not just your first starting 11, because when we were under Pochettino, we had a good starting 11, but the actual squad is where it went down. I remember Dele Alli spoke about it in Monday Night Football, and he was like, we were just missing that 1 or 2 star quality players. And we're not even at the level of the Pochettino era. We're far from that. Do you know what I mean? And what I saw today, and then Dave's already mentioned it, Irish has already mentioned it. He said that they're talking about hotels. Yeah. They're talking about apartments on the north side. The apartments followed with a cinema. Guys, do your research. Yeah. So we're talking about signings and they're talking about building 6-story apartments. So make that make sense. Make the math, like, you tell me what's going on. So I'm saying to you, Ricky, look, one EZE ain't enough. Do you understand? Whether you think EZE or you like Tell more, do you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, as I said before, you need players. EZE's a special player for me because he's a player unlike Tell, and I'm not knocking Tell. Tell's a good player and he's going to be a good player. But in terms of for a player for now, you need players that when we are playing a low block, you need someone that can unlock defenses either through passing or dribbling. EZE can do it through dribbling. Maddison does it through passing. So some people say, oh, how can you have Maddison and EZE in the same team? Attacking midfielders, but they have different attributes to unlock defenses. And that's what we need to look. We need to stop doing this. How can you have this player and that? You need to get it out of our minds. Do you understand? If you look at Semenyo, different skill set again. He's a ball carrier. So he's more for the transition, the quick transitions. Do you understand? Or if we go to a Kudos is a dribbler, but he can play as an attacking 8. He can play as a right-sided midfielder. So a different profile to Kulusevski. Kulusevski obviously uses his strength, but he's a ball carrier rather than a dribbler, a man that can beat someone, that can unlock low blocks. Do you understand? So when you're trying to get to that elite level, you can't just have one player and saying, yeah, because we've had that before. We've had the big summer signings, as I already said before. We've already had the Solanke for 60 million record. We've already had the Brennan Johnson record, 50 million or 55. We already had the Richarlison, which was 65 million. Do you understand? So it's nothing new. If we bring one player through, it's not going to work if we're trying to catch the rest of the pack, because the pack, they've had seasons to build and they've been getting those marquee signings. Like the team across the road, they've had the Declan Rice for 100 million. So if we're looking at Xavi Simons, it can't be Xavi Simons by himself, because we've got a frontline issue. And I'm not saying we do everything at once. I'm not saying that, Ricky. Do you know what I'm saying? But if we was to address the front line, do you know what I'm saying? Got 2 marquees or 1 marquee front line and a number 6, yeah? A destroyer or someone that could be like a regista, someone that could dictate the play, because we've got a problem in our build-up. How many goals did we concede when we were playing out from the back? Am I making sense? Bro, I don't understand. I'm more of an upset. It's just passion. I'm just talking the realness. Do you understand? And if we want to be, it depends. Who are we? That's why I say, Ricky. Every time.
What
Who are we? What are we? What's our? Are we a top 6? Are we a top 8? Are we top 10? What do we want to be as fans? Forget the club for a second. Do you understand? That way, we're able to independently think and we can see through the PR, because that's what it is, bro. A lot of PR right now. Do you understand? But you carry on.
Just on that point, before I come to you and ask you your expectations for the season, just so Ash has referred to it a few times, I think JW as well, and I think Dave has touched upon it. The club have submitted a new planning application for the 4 residential towers that will be built on the south end of the stadium. The club, though, through their Tottenham Hotspur property company arm, submitted the latest set of free applications to Haringey Council last week, and mainly tie up the final reserve matters approval to allow them to commence development work on the 4 buildings that will apparently transform the currently near empty south end of the stadium complex. So those 4 buildings plus a set of townhouses will stand on what is known as a Plot 5 alongside a still to be built extreme sports building and a 180-bedroom hotel with additional apartments that has been granted approval, and is expected that will come in time for the Euro Championships of 2028, where the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium will be one of the host grounds. So that at some point is going to happen. We, of course, as fans, we want to see signings. We want to see improvement in the side. But I just wondered, just come back around here, JW, on the point that, with the club coming out and saying they want to win the Premier League, they want to win the Champions League, they've only put a massive amount of pressure on themselves by saying that. So, I mean, will we know very quickly, John, based on when the window comes to the end of the 1st of September, what we're tracking here? I mean, will we know by then?
Might get some indication. One interesting thing, by the way, talking about all this with who we could bring in or who not, is so we could, maybe Thomas Frank needs to see the squad, but what he already said was how excited he is to play, to start managing and coaching this Tottenham squad, because it has so many great attacking players. He didn't say just play, it was attacking. And that made me think, why, if I was a CID officer interviewing him, why are you saying that? Did somebody tell you to say that? Why are you saying that? Is that how you got the job? No, you don't need these marquee signings. You've got great players, better than I when I went to Brentford to start with. I'll develop them, That's what might worry me that a little bit. But so often with Tottenham, talk is cheap, isn't it? It's really cheap, and I it's early days. I'm excited with this guy coming in, but I'm not. We've all been here before, haven't we? Where you're waiting expectantly for the phone to, it's it's like when you're a teenager waiting for the phone to go with some girl that fancies you or something, you know, and it don't come. It never used to come for me, Ricky. No, I'm only joking.
They wouldn't stop bloody ringing him.
No, that phone was red hot, mate. I'm telling you.
I bet it was.
Yeah, but we've all been here before. So, and if you're a right back and there's a quick transition, who do you want bearing down on you? Tell or Semenyo? You know, you know, these powerful runners. We haven't had powerful runners with the ball, yet alone dribblers, since like Sissoko. I miss the sort of physicality is really missing in the team. You know, I remember other periods. There was a period where, do you remember when Genius might have been under Redknapp, he was the sub, and you'd have to bring him on at half time because there'd be a team defending deep, and we needed somebody to go past the player. And Genius was the only guy that, you know, could actually take the man on at that time. You know.
You know what, though, Joe? I really miss the likes of Lennon and Bale. I mean, that combination on the wings, Bale and Lennon together. The
pace and physicality of Bale was a real athlete. And Lennon, little smart, you know, little darting.
With Hazard, it wasn't always about the end product with Hazard. It was about when he got the ball, as you know, being at White Hart Lane, everyone would get off their seat with Hazard. And it doesn't matter what would actually be the end product, but Hazard, as soon as he got the ball, you get off your feet and you expect something to happen because he just had that blistering pace where you was expecting something. I mean, you tell me, John, and look, it's very early days at the moment, based on Frank coming through the building, based on the decisions he's got to make this summer, what are your personal expectations going in for next season? I mean, we're gonna get you on throughout the summer, but I'm just intrigued at the moment, based on Frank's appointment from what we've heard from him.
Can I do it from prison? Would that be? No, I'm joking. But actually, I shouldn't. Maybe I'll fucking get banged up or something. But, you know, got the beard. I was only joking. But yeah, go on, mate.
What would be your expectations for the season, Jar? Based on this moment in time, what would you see as being?
Well, I'm the same every year. Win the fucking title. Actually, that's the only. Honestly, you know, well, I like, you know, part of parsimonious man, and I think top four would be great, but I wouldn't get it carried away. I quite like the look of that conference league. You know that. You know, I want to win the fucking league, and that's the thing. That's what Levy should be looking at. Dave and Ash, that's what they would want. I'm sure. You want to win, and I don't want it tempered with. Well, the thing is, though, you know, we might need a year or two to develop the players, but we've been in a transitional stage for half a century now. You know, so it's a fucking nonsense. You know, but I've got faith in this bloke for what it's worth, and you know, that squad, you know, can't be as bad. But I've heard myself say that other years. You know, that's you know, which is Dave has brought me down a bit, and I can't argue with his argument. But Dave's, you know, fierce passion is actually depressed me, and I'm thinking, I'm starting to fall into think of fooling myself a little bit. You know, but yeah, and you know, I don't know. Even you start thinking at least get EZE in, you know, because he's a very exciting player.
He looks like a Tottenham player, doesn't he? He just looks.
He looks like a Tottenham player, and I think he wants to come. But all this stuff, you know, the with the deal, you know, if you really want to get it done, you just go and get it done, and it bothers me.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to make the new coach happy, and I'm a manager, I'm going to go and I'm just going to go and get the deal done because. Yeah. It's a false economy if I try and chisel for $1 million or $2 and take too long and a deal doesn't get done and you're missing on. This could have been a key fulcrum for your squad, you know. So yeah, just seeing that Dave has that effect. But Dave, master of doom. No, he spoke sense. Dave, you spoke sense.
I think he's master. I just think master of reality where we are right now. I think many people, as David said, will be looking around thinking. We're a week away from the 1st of July. Players are returning for pre-season, and that's where I think, for me, just coming back to that point, I think, you know, a lot of managers will want to work with their players during pre-season. We should be, like I say, right now, busting our bollocks to get these players in for Thomas Frank. But I mean, it goes back to what you said, Dave, earlier. I'll be intrigued, and I know, Jar, you said it as well. If it is about working with the current group and trying to get a lot out of the current group, because he said it, you know, in that first interview. He loves to work with attacking players. So, all about the league then, Joe, yeah? All about
I thought it was very telling what he said, you know, as attacking players. because you when I saw it, I thought, why are you saying that? The shit, you know. Well, actually, it's unfair, but you know, they're not. They're just a bit lightweight, really. We lack that physicality. We lack, as Ash was saying, you really lack dribblers. You lack people who can go past somebody, make something happen, and you need that. You need that at the high levels of the sport when you get compact defences. So that kind of, you know. But let's see. I mean, you got this Langer, haven't you? So you got the stats guy. You got Paratici, that's the loose cannon guy, right? Haven't you?
We're trying to find out where he is. Hopefully, we'll get him back in the building at some point. But I think that's going to be an interesting point. I mean, David's come to you on that point for you. Obviously, where we are right now, hearing Frank's interviews and the way he spoke, you said you were really motivated at the start of the show. What do you feel is achievable given what he's got to work with and what the summer may hold at the moment? Given, look, again, we have to put this out. We are early June. There's still a lot of time to make signings until the 1st of September. What would be your aspirations, your expectations for this upcoming season, in your opinion?
Look, to be honest, I think it's hard to put expectations or aspirations on them until we get the squad improvements, because at the end of the day, the squad improvements are needed. You know, going into the campaign with this squad as is, that's the only way I can sort of give my prediction. And if with the squad as is, I think you probably get us inside the top 10, hopefully get, you know, by a couple of rounds in the cups, probably fail miserably in the Champions League.
What do you think of it? What about defence? We've not really talked about. We talked about attacking. What about defensively?
Yeah, look, I think defensively, I think we've actually got some real good options. Romero, Van der Ven, Doji, Spence, Porro. I like Danzo as well. I think we've got some real good options in there. And I think Frank will, you know, bring a bit more defensive stability to what we're trying to do. That will ultimately give us the platform to build on, because at the end of the day, consistency in defence wins you leagues.
And midfield? What about midfield?
Midfield, look, I still think he could do with that sort of specialist CDM that sits in there. He had that at Brentford with Norgard. He done a very good job there for them. I still think he needs that. I think he can make the rest of the options work there, minus Basuma. But at the end of the day, you need consistency up front to win games and put points on the board consistently. Goals win you games. And that was our biggest problem last season.
It's not, so it's number 6. We talk number 6, number 10, and Eze.
Yeah, and there's a sort someone again through the middle that can sort of play out wide.
And a wide striker, or should we be looking for, you know, is Richarlison? We've not discussed him. Is he going to be going?
Look, when it comes to the two strikers, look, the only thing around Richarlison is more so his fitness. I think the two of them will bag more goals under Thomas Frank. He'll put the ball in the box. He's not married to a certain system or a certain style of play where he has to play, you know, under Postecoglou was one-dimensional down the left-hand side, and hopefully Brendan Johnson comes in on the right-hand side and taps at home. You know, it was rinse and repeat. And if that was blocked off, we had no answers to it. Frank spoke in his interview, you know, I'll put balls in behind, get runners in, I'll put balls in the box. That means you'll get more out of Richarlison, you'll get more out of Solanke. It's just whether the club, I think, will get an offer in and around what they paid for Richarlison. Then I think they'll cash in. But for me, it's all about making the signings to help Thomas Frank have a successful season. You know, and I think he alluded
what
to
would
that.
be your, right now, what would be you and Ash, sorry, Ricky, and you, who would we, what 2 signings, not even 3, what 2 signings would we love to see happen at Tottenham now?
Go on, Dave, you take it over.
Look, I'd love us to be able to bring in Eze and probably MBEUMO. I think the two of them would really wet my lips, really get me excited, because I think you'll have a really good back line, a really good forward line. And to be honest with you, you could create a midfield around that sort of works, you know, to a large degree. So for me, they're the massive, you know, up front for me, the forward line is the massive improvements. We sit here and say we don't have any players that can get us out of our seat. Of course we don't.
And what about then Kulusevski? You're now starting to get a bit top heavy. What about Kulusevski and Maddison? Because you've now got 3 10s.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you know, I've no problem. Competition is key, you know, and the best man wins, and you get the best performance on the football pitch. With Kulu, you know, he can play out wide. He can even double up as a striker. He scored goals when he had to play there before for Tottenham Hotspur. So for me, at the end of the day, and if they moan and cry, I'd say, okay, Maddison, well, where were you when everyone else was injured and you were sitting on the bench? You know, where everyone else was running through the winger, a ringer, you know, for me. Kulusevski, you know. He went injured. That's fair enough. But I'd be saying to these players, you finished 17th last year. If you think your place is guaranteed, you're
I would have been saying that to. I'd be saying that to Romero.
For me, it's all about.
We finished 17th, and your RV played a game for us for over the 2 years leading up to this final.
He missed a third of the season. I mean, just to bring Ash into this conversation as well. And I mean, Dave, just actually, I'll finish on you and go to Ash. I mean, Ash.
So I did mean Ash as well. That's what I said. Ash. What 2 players he would have? Sorry, Ricky, I'm an old, you know.
No, I want to bring Ash in, but Dave, the one thing I want to finalise with you on is that they did say that the reason why they essentially parted ways with Andy is they want to face on all 4 fronts. So by doing that, you've got to give the manager to compete on all 4 fronts, right, Dave?
Well, that's the thing, a manager is only good as the tools as he's got to work with, So if that's the expectations, you've got to deliver the players of gravitas that can go and do that at the end of the day. My big cynical Spurs fan in me, the reason why they got rid of Postecoglou is because they didn't want to commit to them sort of transfer fees and wages and stuff like that. But look, we'll wait and see. If that rumour of the investment is coming and that's why we haven't seen anything, okay, fair enough. Mm-hmm. But we haven't got off to a great start to really help kickstart Frank's revolution. And look, I apologise for maybe bringing down the tone of the show or whatever.
No. You spoke sense. No, I was joking.
I know what you mean in that regard. I know you were joking. But at the end of the day, it's concerning when you just see other teams.
Well, the teams around us. The teams around us are improved. Yeah.
Teams that we're expected to go and compete with, and I don't think it's unrealistic to ask Tottenham to be proactive and fix problems. So I do apologise in that regard, but at the end of the day, my whole aim is to get us to compete next year. I don't want another season like last season where we're losing games week in, week out, getting battered by.
I must admit, when Chelsea signed Delap, straight off,
Yeah,
I would have thought he would have been an ideal signing for us,
But we have to remember, Dave. You're saying if I brought the mood down, the club are the ones that have set the barrier, Dave, saying they want to win the Premier League and they want to win the Champions League. So I mean, they're the ones that are setting that barrier. So if you're going to set that barrier and expectation, then they got to deliver.
But in order to meet them expectations, you act like Liverpool, you act like City, you go early in the market, you get your targets in, so you don't leave them there sitting ducks, so that they can generate interest from everybody else. But look, my whole aim is I just want to get back to competing on all 4 fronts, like we were under Pochettino. It's proof that we can do it. So hopefully we can finish this summer, with some signings in the bag, and let's kick on. But look, let's wait and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see. Ash,
but the interesting thing is, with all we're talking about, really, is 2 signings. Really, isn't it? So
I mean, look, it comes back to that point. Is 2 enough when the club are saying, kind of you, Ash, they want to compete on all 4 fronts, and here comes the crescendo. Ash, take us away. What 2 signings do you want? What do we need to do? In your mind?
Yeah, because it's not as simple as 2 signings, is it? Everybody knows we need. Maddison's not going to last the whole season. We all know that.
No.
So that's an issue in itself. Then you've got the left-sided issue as well, where if you're going to lose a Son, how do you replace those 17 to 19 goal contributions? And then on that right hand side, as I said before, we do have a real problem in terms of possession, in terms of like retaining the ball or a player that can beat his man. Simple as that. Then you've got the defensive midfielder issue, where we've got players that they're a bit of both, where they can, they're not bad on the ball. They're quite technical, but we kind of need a player that's a lot more physical, but we also need a passer. We need someone that can break lines from deep, if that makes sense, from that defensive third, because when you watched Brentford's team, it was Norgard that would get on the ball, and he was the one that would find WISSA and MBEUMO, because he was passing from that kind of defensive area, and those guys could push high up. Sometimes you'd see WISSA drop in, and then MBEUMO would make the run into the striker, so he's doing an out to in run, if that makes sense. So they would often interchange into position, confusing opponents that went man to man. So we need a midfielder that's going to be able to drop in that kind of hole at the back and then fire those balls to find those type of players. So that's what I mean. But to caveat my whole point, I would say that we are in June, and financially the season ends on June the 30th. And so in terms of contracts, clubs don't want to pay necessarily for an extra month. They don't want that showing up on their books either, because it will affect the FFP, PSR, all that rubbish, all that financial jargon. So that's why typically you see a lot of movement from a lot of clubs from the 1st of July, which is before they go back to training, if that makes sense. because we go back to training, I believe, the first week of July, which I think not the first week, the end of the first week of July, which is around the 7th or around the 10th. And then the actual preseason first game isn't till the 31st. Now, if we haven't done any business by, like, you know, the beginning of July, then I'm like with Dave, do you understand? I'm going mad. But I'm just trying to be balanced here, just to throw out, like, this is how they think, their accountants. They're like, we don't want to pay July's wage. We'll pay, I mean, June's wage. We'll pay July's wage. Do you know what I mean? So that's when you typically see business. But I've always been angry as a fan. This is the reason why I've been upset with Levy for many seasons, because he does take his time to get those transfers going. And that was some of the things that I've read, that he doesn't like to pay even for July. He used to wait till August. So he would save on July as well. July's wage. He would wait till August. And then a lot of managers we've had before, coaches we've had before, haven't had the pre-season for their new players to get off in the run, to get off into like pre-season fitness and understand the tactics or the level of coaching what the manager wants. So yeah, I mean, that's how I see things at the moment.
Listen, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I mean, we've discussed on the show at length, you know, the manager's got a lot of key conversations. There's going to have early doors with the likes of Son, the likes of Romero. And again, I think we can't underestimate, which Dave did touch upon as well, this issue we've got around the homegrown quota and how that is going to impact the squad and what they want to do through the window. But I think, again, you can be at that point, like we've been on the show fairly balanced, where there are teams that arguably that the club have now said really are our competitors and are our rivals, that if we are looking, I think once again, the point on this is that we weren't given really a time scale or a time frame of when we want to compete for the Premier League, when we want to compete for the Champions League, which leaves that open to interpretation about when are we going to look to compete for that level of competition. But the reality is what the club did say and made it clear a couple of times during the interview between Daniel Levy and Vinay Venkatesham that they do want to compete on all four fronts. And what I would argue is that I can't remember the last time a manager has really been given the tools to compete on all four fronts. And even when you go back to Jose, to Conte, to Maurizio, no manager's really been given that opportunity to compete on all four fronts. So the reality is, despite the issues they're going to face with the homegrown quota, despite what Ash says they're about maybe looking to get to July, when they want to maybe bring players in and around the contractual situation, they're going to have to give Thomas Frank a squad that is going to be able to compete across the four competitions to give him the best possible chance to succeed as Spurs head coach. I think it's fair to say there's a lot of work to be done this summer, and we shall see how they get on. I want to say a massive thanks to this wonderful panel. Jar, thank you so much. The swear jar's not been too bad, so it's not going to cost us too much for the Last Word On Spurs Christmas kit.
And listen, all you lads, good show, because sometimes in these podcasts of football, you've got absolute tossers who speak rubbish, but actually these two guys, Ricky, same as you, know what they're talking about, which is lovely. Well, sometimes you can fall asleep, you know. You know what I mean?
Shame about the FNOs though. He's no cop.
No, you don't. You're good. You've got a very nice way with you. Yeah, very polished. He's fine, mate. Yeah.
Bless you. Listen, we love you so much. We'll be getting you back for more. Like I say, John, any I feel like I'm not doing at the office here. Any gigs we need to know about? Anything coming up in the diary we should be asking you about?
Yeah, we got an Alton tour coming up. I've got a record coming out with Ken Booth, reggae album this week. My son's got an album coming out, Tian Kiyi. I'm on that. That comes out at the end of the week. And yeah, I'm doing a show with them actually in Merton. Damo Suzuki tribute night. Doing that next week in London. But yeah, I've got a dub record out next week. So I've got 3 records. I bring records out to compete against myself. I'm very clever like that, you know. But yeah, so I've got a few records out, and I'm you know, Tottenham still. I still wake up thinking of Tottenham and thinking, is he going to play 3 at the back? And you know, thinking that'd be. I hope against the top 6 teams to see what away from home. Danso, Romero, if he's still there, and Van der Veen. You know what I mean? And actually, just one positive thing: you compare the squad this year in terms of numbers and experience, and they've won a cup, and they know what their Premier League's about. It's and you know, actually defensively and in terms of runners in midfield, I don't think it's that bad. It's just in terms of that difficult stuff, like the real classy last third thing, having great, you know, really great elite players. That worries me. But that's what also teams lack. The top teams, they buy that talent in as soon as they can, as we've said, you know.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. Jar, I get driven mad about you when I'm on the tube, how much they love you on this show. One of the highlights, obviously, was the last time you had you on with Dave, and again, why do you keep calling him fucking Dean?
Well, it was. I didn't know because you were calling another name, and I felt like I've been calling the geezer Dave all night. Yeah.
Never change. We love you very much. We can't wait to see you again. Ash, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. I think it's fair to say, look, we'll see what happens in these next couple of weeks, but you'll be with us on the journey here in terms of what the club do and don't do, right? Is it fair to say that, Ash, and there'll be lots of stuff going on in Spurs Kings TV, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. Big up the panel, man. Big up Jah, you know. Jah. Hey. Big up Irish. And obviously, Ricky, thanks for having me on. Big up the chat as always. And
Richard.
Yeah, man. Big up. Love.
Thank you so much. And Dave, thank you so much. I feel so bad. We're meant to be calming Dave down for a new season. We brought him on here. And like in all things Tottenham, we're back at it again. So Dave, listen, mate, we'll be using you as much as we can throughout the summer and also keeping you ready for... Dave, are we entering your third season of Last Word On Spurs or second? I can't remember now. Is it third or second?
This will be my second season here at Last Word On Spurs, entering the second. Look, that's why I took the week holiday earlier on, you know, after the cup final, you know, just so that I could enjoy it. Because I knew I'd be back to bringing frustrated and angry with Tottenham. I knew there was turmoil, you know, on the horizon. There always is at Tottenham Hotspur, so I'm refreshed and I'm all here for it. But look, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Big up Ricky, big up Jah, big up Ash. It's been a pleasure to spend the evening with you. Hopefully we can get business done before the end of the window and calm me down.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Looking for having Dave on deadline, though. That's fair to say, depending on what we Tottenham do or don't do. And that's all, because that's going to be a fascinating show. Guys, thank you so much to the over 8,000 that are watching the show live. We really appreciate it. Look, 3 of our fabulous returning guests. You will see their faces across the summer. We're parading a number of summer signings. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful musician Jah Wobble, to the brilliant Ash Matic at the Spurs Kings, to the superb Dave from the Irish Hotspur. Please make sure you're liking and subscribing to both Ash at Spurs King, Dave, of course, at the Irish Hotspur, and keep liking and subscribing to Last Word On Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. We'll be back before you know it. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.